We are still waiting for people to join us. Leave your mics. If you're not one of the speakers, please leave your mics on mute until I open the meeting.
Good evening, everyone.
We have a couple people in the waiting room that are coming into the meeting, and I'm just trying to give them a chance to get in the meeting before I open the meeting with prayer and introduce our speakers. So. Good evening, everyone. My name is the Reverend Rhonda Rogers, and I am the pastor at St. Francis of Assisi in Prairie View. And I want to thank you for joining us this evening for our first town hall to discuss the Prairie View zip code. As I am a pastor and my boss is God, I would like to open us with prayer before I introduce our speakers this evening. So if you would take a minute to settle yourselves in and take a few deep breaths and clear your minds to enter this time of discussion and of listening. Heavenly Father, in your word, you have given us a vision of that holy city to which the nations of the world bring their glory. Behold and visit, we pray, the cities of the earth. Renew the ties of mutual regard which form our civic life. Send us honest and able leaders. Enable us to listen well, to serve well, to forgive well, and to hope well. Give us your grace so that we may eliminate poverty, prejudice, and oppression, that peace may prevail with righteousness and justice with order, and that men and women from different cultures and with different talents may find with one another the fulfillment of their humanity through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen.
So just some technical things. If you are not a speaker, if you're not one of the four speakers, please leave your microphones on mute. We will handle questions at the end of the evening. Each speaker will be given 10 minutes to share. And you have two ways to do questions. If you want to get them in ahead of time, in the queue ahead of time, you can use the chat function, which you may find at the bottom of your Zoom. In the middle, there's a box that says chat. You can click on that and you can type to everyone, or certainly to me, whatever your questions may be. And then we will read them at the end of the session. If we run out of time with our Q&A and there's questions left in the chat, you can use the church email, and I will capture the ones in the chat and we will get them answered and out to you at another time through another avenue. So we have four speakers this evening. And one of our first speaker, well, not our first speaker, but our first speaker is Zante Wallace, who is a city councilman for the city of Prairie View, elected in 2018. He obtained his bachelor's degree in mathematics and will obtain his master's in community development later this year. He enjoys mentoring, community building, and reading in his spare time, and hopes to continue developing communities all around the world. He is also a member of Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity, the Epsilon Tau Lambda chapter. Our second speaker is attorney Sylvia Cedillo. And Ms. Cedillo is a longtime resident of the city of Prairie View. She has served on a zip code committee for realigning the city of Prairie View zip code in the past, and was previously on the City Council of Prairie View and the Waller County Commissioner's Court. Our third speaker will be the Honorable Frank D. Jackson. He was a civil servant, or I should say is a civil servant, author of 5 books, and a 1973 graduate from Prairie View A&M University. Following 8 years of active duty in the United States Navy, he returned to Prairie View in 1982 as assistant professor for naval science, and simultaneously accepted a commission in the U.S. Naval Reserve. He has held various positions at the university since 1982, and most recently, he was assigned as the Community Affairs Director by the President. Many of you know he was a former city councilman for 12 years and a Waller County Commissioner for Precinct 3 for 8. And Mr. Jackson has also served as mayor for the city of Prairie View for 7 terms from 2002 to 2016. He is currently the president and fire chief of the Prairie View Volunteer Firefighting Association. He is a 33rd degree Mason, a member of the Ancient Egyptian Arabic Order Nobles of the Mystic Shrine in Doric Temple in Houston, and the Grand Junior Warden for the Most Worshipful Prince Hall Grand Lodge of Texas. He is a member of Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity, Epsilon Tau Lambda chapter. And our final speaker will be Braun Bryant. And Mr. Bryant is currently the postmaster for the United States Post Office in Prairie View. He has more than 27 years of service with the United States Postal Service. He is a native Houstonian and a graduate of James Madison High School, and he earned an associate degree in business from the University of Houston. He is also a licensed worker comp adjuster and a licensed real estate agent. Please welcome our 4 speakers. And I invite Zante Wallace to please start our discussion this evening.
Yeah, so first and foremost, much love and positivity to everybody at this town hall meeting right now. I apologize if some of our verbiage gets lost in the wind because I work naturally at the university. And one of the things that we have to do is we got to monitor the students, make sure they're social distancing, have their mask on because we're trying to prevent any type of as the moderator stated, that I came in as city councilman in 2018. So I may not be as knowledgeable as those who were on the zip code committee earlier when in the 90s and the 2000s and the early 2010s. But I could tell you that a lot of them really educated me on not only the situation, but the implications of the situation of the zip code and how it affects the city of Prairie View. So first want to give kudos to everybody that has put in work and got us to the point where we're at with the zip code. So where we're at right now in terms of progress. So I've been in contact with Miss Rosie Baker, who is the regional director of USPS, and Mr. Braun from our U.S. Postal Office. So one of the biggest things that they first asked, because the package was already sent in, was that they needed a map, basically designating where the city limits of the city of Prairie View is at, so they know exactly where they need to put in the system. So I had went to Key Map and got a map of the county and had the limits of the city of Prairie View drawn out, had it printed out. So it was I think it was 4 by 6 feet. And then we had given it to Rosie Baker and she approved of it, right? And that was one of two big steps. The second one was that she said that she needed, and Ms. Baker, just for those who may not be aware, she also is working on the zip code issue for other cities in the county like Patterson that had a similar zip code issue. So she's been familiar with the process and has been helping me through it, also the zip code committee. So the second thing was that she needed an Excel sheet with everybody who lives in the limits of the city of Prairie View. And on the Excel sheet, it has to say what PO box they use and if they use home address. Now, of course, a lot of people don't use home address because of the zip code issue to begin with, but some people, as I've been told, have used the Waller and Hempstead address on the limits on the edges of the city and get stuff delivered by mail to their home address. So what I had did was work with the zip code committee to create a survey that is going to everybody's water bill for the August and September cycle, where they can put on the survey whether they use their PO box or whether they use their home address, just so everybody can be included just in case. And once we get all those results back, we're going to create that Excel sheet with everybody's name in it, with it stating whether they use a PO box or whether they use a home address. Once we get that Excel sheet, we're supposed to send it in. Now, Miss Baker told me that it is a longer process to do it in general, and I'm expecting with COVID-19 that it will be an even longer process because of all that's going on. But what she told me that typically the year you turn it in, it won't be done to the year after. So if we were turning in 2019, it'd been 2020. So if we turn it in by 2020, hopefully it'll be over, hopefully by the end of 2021, and that we will be putting the system of USPS for our zip code limits to be stretched to the east and to the west of Hempstead and Waller. So that is where we are at now. And I really do give a lot of kudos to the people on the zip code committee that in the meeting that we had, they gave the knowledge of it so that we can continue to hopefully make the right and most efficient moves for us to conclude this issue once and for all.
Okay, Zante, so what do you need the participants of the meeting to do over the next couple of months?
Yes, ma'am. So, well, I definitely need. So, as I said earlier, we put the survey and people's water bills for the August and September cycle, just so we had an extra month just in case they didn't get the first time or they didn't know. So a lot of it is awareness, right? Putting the word out, kind of like census in a sense, that we need people to know why the zip code issue is an issue, because some people may not be keen to fill out the survey. And it's a really quick survey, but they may not even take that 30, 45 seconds if they're not aware of the issue in itself. Two, it is if they do fill it out that we give them the right direction, tell them to turn it back into City Hall. Because if they fill it out but leave it at home, then once again, that is a survey sheet that hasn't been accounted for. And what Ms. Baker told me is that there has to be a majority of the citizens needs to make sure that they turn in that survey, because what they do is when they look at that survey, they see how many yeses and how many no's wants the city limits to be expanded. So if a whole bunch of people say no, then, or majority says no, then they're not going to do it. If majority says yes, then they're going to do it. But however, the caveat is if a adequate amount of the population doesn't fill it out at all, then they may not feel like they've gotten a good percentage or a good sample size of the citizens to see whether they truly want it to be expanded or not, and may end the whole operation before we have a chance to get to the final stage. So really it is just awareness, maybe putting out flyers at different areas within the city that people go by, whether it's the Dollar General, whether it's a gas station, asking those business owners, can they help? And really just spreading the word, because we want to get as many of these surveys into City Hall as quick as possible, because one, it helps get an adequate size, but then for those making the Excel sheet, you don't want to do it last second either, because you don't want to put so much work. So if it's a diligent amount over an extended amount of time, then I think that would really help out. And those who are working on the Excel sheet would really appreciate it.
Thank you, Zante. Anything else you want to add before we switch to the next speaker?
No, I just like I said, I want to thank everybody for being here. And I really hope that we can end this thing once and for all and gain the benefits of working together as a community to find a solution to this problem.
Thank you, Zante.
Yes, thank you.
Our next speaker is Attorney Sylvia Cedillo.
Good evening, everyone. I just wanted to, I guess, congratulate the council member on his work. And this has been a long project. One of the good things was there was a committee appointed probably about 2 or 3 years ago that did probably extensive homework on this. This issue of expounding the zip code boundary lines is incredibly difficult, and you don't get to request the changing of your boundary lines, but once every 10 months. And so the committee that we worked with looked at the city of Keller as a model. That was one of the models, because that's a city that had succeeded in realigning their zip code boundaries. And I'm going to kind of defer to our Mr. Brown, who was speaking, but I just wanted to say that a lot of the work has been done, and I think one of the most important things that we can do is simply just move forward, update the survey. But I believe that the information that should be submitted to the post office is ready to go, and I just want to let folks know that report that was put together was comprehensive. It followed the City of Keller model, which also included the survey. Probably the majority of people participating on this call participated in that survey process. So that should pretty much be it. I think what the public needs to know is probably what's the timeline here for getting it submitted. And that's, I think, the most important thing, because this is something that's been going on for decades. So I'm going to go ahead and defer to other speakers, but that's essentially what I wanted to say, is to tell the public that the work has been done. Comprehensive work was done by the committee about 2 years ago. The survey is great to be updating and giving more expansive information to the post office once that is submitted for consideration for the realignment. But I'd really like to hear from other folks who are on the committee, because we really don't need history. What we need is to confirm that that document is still available, that it's ready to be sent, that the surveys will be updated, that there'll be a good summary of the survey work that's been done. But really, what the public needs to know is, what are our odds of getting this done? When is our deadline? And that's what we all need to know if we're going to move forward. So I just want to highlight those things as part of the process. Thank you.
Mr. Jackson, the floor is yours.
I've unmuted my line. I was invited to be a part of this because we have worked on this over the years, and I wanted to commend you, Reverend Rogers, and your leadership there at the church for calling this town hall meeting. I want to also commend the committee that performed the work to get us to this point where we're just about to wrap this up. I will add a little history. I think that's important that we can kind of get our bearings together. So if we have to go further, we at least have a reference point. Just as a little background, Prairie View had a post office back when this was just still a territory, and it was in Duncan Robinson's store. It moved from there onto the campus, and it was operating as a branch of Hempstead's post office. Elroy Stevenson and Ron Leverett. Ron Leverett was the mayor. He authorized Elroy Stevenson to work with Mickey Leland, who was on the postal committee, to help us get our own independent post office, move it out of the student center where we were actually running out of mailboxes because of the growth of the campus and the city. It had very few mailboxes, and we wanted our own independent post office and our own zip code because all of the mail we were sending to Hempstead was getting credit for it. So Mickey Leland met with the committee. They did authorize us to set up a postal office here in Prairie View. Greg Laughlin was our congressman. That happened. And they gave us a zip code 77446, which was for the post office. We thought it was for the whole community, but it was just for that facility itself. On up until we got the rural addressing grant. And I think this is where the zip code issue came into play. It was the rural addressing grant. Before then, the city of Prairie View assigned its own addresses to residents. Each mayor, I know Ron did it, I know Lee did it, Carruthers did it. Each one of them authorized to work with either San Bernard or one of the utilities companies, phone companies, to give people addresses so we could get a uniform addressing system in the city. And most cities tried that. But we all organized under the HGAC grant to get a rural addressing grant so we could dispatch emergency vehicles, fire, police, medical services to the community, and they could go to a good address and not have to go down and use local landmarks like trees and barns and stuff like that. That happened. Since the city had a small staff, everyone agreed that the county would be the one that would train the people to assign a uniform addressing system using the new GIS system. And so they did that. They hired a person to go around in a truck and do GIS latitudes and longitudes on every location, whether it was a barn, whether it was a home, do the offsets. And that was the mapping system. Where the problem came up was that they decided to use the post office zip code system instead of just giving out addresses. And the Postal Service had assigned all the residents to the west of University Drive to have a rural delivery of mail to the Hempstead Post Office, and all of the homes to the east of University Drive to the Waller Post Office. And by the county adopting that zip code system, that caused confusion. And they didn't have to do that for 911 purposes, but they elected to do it. And that's where the problem came in, because people started getting addresses that reflected Waller. I had a resident come to City Hall and said she was told to change her driver's license because she was now a Waller resident. Same thing on this side. My home is showing up as being in Hempstead. City Hall is showing up on some maps as being in Waller. And if you try to find us in cyberspace, we disappear. It caused problems with us getting all of sales tax proceeds. People that move into Prairie View, especially in the Pine Island area, are confused as to where they live because many of them have an exchange that says Hempstead phone number, and they also have a Hempstead address that has caused problems in our elections. So it's like it's a big problem for us. And so I'm glad the committee has solved this problem. I hope it is resolved because it's something that we need to do years ago. We did meet with Congressman Michael McCall in Washington, D.C. We met in his office for over 2 hours. We had the NAACP attorneys with us. The Postal Service sent a representative to the office. Nothing was resolved. We was back to square one after that long meeting. So if we're able to move the needle and get this thing done, I'm all for it, and I commend those that did it. But I thought it was important to give a little background so people that may not be familiar with all of the things that have happened over time, it's not like people had not been working. They would know that something did happen to try to resolve this issue. And for some reason, we ran across a block. I think it was more of a political roadblock because that has kept Prairie View pretty much divided. And we've had voting issues and all of the kind of issues as a result of this. So I yield my time to the next speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. Ron, Mr. Bryant, the floor is yours.
Yes, good afternoon. I'm honored. Can you all hear me?
Yes, sir, we can.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. I'm honored, and I appreciate the invite and the invitation. I'm actually commuting to another deal I have to attend to, so I'm not on camera. But first of all, I thank Mr. Jackson for that history rundown, and then of course Ms. Sedil and Councilman Wallace. They've all spoken. They've given us a lot of good information, and so not to belabor the time, I'll just kind of get to what our side is from the postal standpoint. So of course I work for the Postal Service, but I want to work for the community, and whatever I can do to help facilitate this zip code issue, I'm all for it. And so I arrived in Prairie View about 2 years ago, and I think this issue was brought to me about 6 months after I had been in Prairie View. So I immediately called the powers to be and expressed the concerns of the citizens of Prairie View about this addressing issue. And I was told that yes, they had applied for it before. You can only apply every 10 years. And so as Mr. Wallace, and he's done an excellent job, I really want to give kudos to him because he's definitely been on top of it. But as he stated earlier, we ended up calling a meeting with Ms. Rosie Baker, who is the next higher up for the Postal Service in the Houston district regarding this matter. We met in the mayor's office along with several others, and she gave the city a roadmap of what needed to be done. Mr. Wallace explained that very well. He's been addressing all of the concerns. And so basically what we stand now is we're just awaiting, and when I say we, I'm speaking from the postal standpoint, we're just awaiting those surveys. As soon as those surveys come in, I will get those sent over to Ms. Rosie because I'm more so a liaison between the community and the Postal Service. And as soon as we get those surveys in, she will then send out an official survey to the addresses you all indicated. And based on the response, as Mr. Wallace stated, that will determine the next move. If the majority of the residents are for the address changing, for the street delivery zip code boundary, reboundary, then we'll move forward, because I think there were two issues. One was people were concerned about street delivery. And as Mr. Jackson stated, you all do have street delivery in certain areas of Prairie View, but it's kind of condescending because, you know, your delivery won't come out of Prairie View. It comes out of either Hempstead or Waller, and you have to go to those post offices and let them know, hey, I live in this area of the county and I would like street delivery. And I don't believe that that addresses the main issue, which was Prairie View being addressed as a city or being recognized as a city. And so the first issue was to square up the territory, and that's what Mr. Wallace was working on with the map. Once we got the map in, you all identify what's considered the city of Prairie View. Then we go within that boundary and identify the residents, where they get their mail, how do they want to get their mail, and then we get those surveys sent out. So, you know, like I said, at this point, basically we're just waiting on those surveys. Once we get those in, we'll get that sent up to Ms. Rosie. She'll then generate official surveys asking the residents, do they want street delivery? And then from that, we'll move on. As Mr. Wallace stated, once again, he did an excellent job. Once those get sent in, it takes about a year. So the timeline is about a year. You know, we said in the meet, she said, if you guys send it in this year, it won't be until next year when we get an answer. So 2020 is fastly winding down. So I would say reasonably, I would not expect this to be done until 2022, because I don't think, I mean, you know, even if you move fast on it, just based on waiting on the response from the residents, let's say they come back in October, November timeframe, we get that sent up to Rosie. We have what's called peak season in the Postal Service, and that's normally November to January. That's our busiest time, and they don't allow them to work on extra projects per se. So we're looking at the earliest, the beginning of January, to get this submitted. And I would say reasonably sometime in 2022, you all should have an answer. So with that being said, you know, if there's anything I can do, I'm here for you guys. I will do as much as I can. I've been working with Mr. Zante kind of hand in hand. And so every time he asks me something, I send it to her, we get a response, and he moves on to the next issue. So he is doing a good job of tackling the issues. And, you know, we just need to get those surveys in. So with that being said, I'll go ahead and turn it back over to you, ma'am. And if I fall off, I have to attend another function, but I'm going to try and hang on as long as I can.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bryan. I appreciate that. So I open the floor for questions. And so what I ask you to do, if you have a question, there is something at the bottom, for those of you that are on computers, it says reactions. If there's a thumbs up, if you do a thumbs up on your screen, it lets me know that you wanted to ask a question, because I'm going to try to keep track of the order so that we have an orderly, or you can use the chat function and put your question into the chat. Any questions? Joyce, I see your hand up. Go right ahead. Unmute yourself and go right ahead. Joyce, can you hear me? Go ahead. Unmute yourself.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I guess this question is from Councilman Wallace. If after we get our August water bills and the surveys start coming in, and you think they're coming in slowly and maybe not that many will come in September, what can we do as citizens to help our neighbors get those surveys in?
Yes, ma'am. So thank you for the question, Ms. Thornton. That's a great question, right? So one is really going to be a community effort, right? We have to go back to the old way of letting people know. So one thing is I do want to reach out to Mayor Allen, see if you can do a robocall, so we can get a mass number of people to get that information as quickly as possible. But two, it's just checking up, right? I know we got Facebook groups. I know that some of us are in group chats, right? Just putting in those different mediums that, hey, this is the survey. And it may also be good to take a picture of the survey so people know what you're talking about, so they can be looking for it. Taking a picture, putting in the group chat, putting it in a survey, or putting in a group chat, or putting it on Facebook or something like that, or whatever social medium, and letting people know, like, we need to be aware of this, which is why we wanted to put it not just in the August cycle, but also in the September cycle, for the fact that some people may not get it the first time. So if people have not already received it, which a lot of people have, because I actually got some calls from citizens asking about it, and I'll try to take time to educate them about it. Just continue to go one by one. And the honesty and truth of the matter is, right, everybody can only do so many people, right? But if we all have a multitude of people going to circle groups, and not only that, but I know there's a lot of churches within different areas of the city of Prairie View. So as St. Francis doing an excellent job of having a town hall meeting, we can also reach out to United Methodists, right? We can reach out to the church in Rosewood and have them connect with the people in that area so that we can just try to cover as many people as possible when covering our bases.
Thank you. The other question in the chat is, what year was the last application submitted? Does anybody have that information?
Mr. Wallace?
Yes, for that particular question, was that addressed to me, or I can tell you right now?
Yeah, go
I
ahead.
I can't give the exact year of when the
Okay.
last application was put in.
Okay, well, we'll do a follow-up on that one for that question. And so I see Open Mic Academy. I don't know who the person's name is, so I apologize for just using your organization, but please unmute yourself and ask your question. Open Mic Academy. You can unmute yourself and ask your question.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes,
Can you hear me now?
yes.
Okay, this is Dr. Michael Pence. The last time that I'm aware of that the application was filled out for the zip code change was either between 2012 and 2014. And as far as helping to spread the information, whomever would be the person to put it upon themselves to be the spokesman. We have a phone number that you can dial in, leave your information. We do a daily radio show that's been throughout this community since 2002. And we broadcast every day, and we'd be more than happy to help spread that message. The phone number is 713-570-6736. Or if a person needs to call and talk to me personally, my phone number is 832-213-8824. And we'd be more than happy to help spread this message out because, as has been stated, this has been a long going process and a lot of the legwork had been done. It's just a matter of closing the gaps now.
Bryant, do you know, Mr. Bryant, do you know the date of the exact date of the last submission for zip code?
It's kind of gray. It's been a lot that has happened. I served on 4B economics for quite some time, and I know we made it personal efforts to make sure that we got that survey out. We did the surveys, real extensive, detailed research, and I know it's between 2012 and 2014. It's somewhere probably in the records in the archives of 4B economics, but I know that it had been laid out.
Okay. And I just, in the chat, I just typed in the phone numbers that Dr. Pence gave over. And so
Prince.
Sorry?
Yes, that was Prince, Prince.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Okay, thank you. So another question for you, Mr. Bryant, and that is, what does apply for realignment every 10 years mean? And do we know the target number of surveys that we want?
Yes, ma'am. So as far as the target year, the every 10-year deal, according to Ms. Baker, a city can only apply to have the boundaries realigned every 10 years. Why is that? I'm not 100% sure. I'm thinking maybe because of the leg work and the time it takes. You know, they don't, they don't want to receive one every 2 or 3 years, because I'm thinking because of the time it simply takes. So that's what that means. You can apply for the boundaries. And I have a I'll have to find it and give it to Mr. Wallace, but it actually outlines all the rules as to how and when you can apply for a boundary or realignment. And then the second question, ma'am, if you don't mind, could you repeat that for me? I think you said they
Yeah,
wanted to know how many surveys.
Yes, how many surveys do we need to, the target number of surveys that's needed in order for the application to be submitted?
Yes, ma'am. So, as Mr. Wallace stated earlier, basically, there's not a set number. The more surveys, the better, because what happens is when, okay, let's say there are 100 people that Ms. Baker surveys. If she gets no response, those non-response counts as a no, essentially, because if she sends out 100 surveys, let's say Mr. Wallace is doing the lead work right now. He's getting, he's getting a list of individuals. He's getting the names together and say, okay, who wants street delivery? Let's say it's 100. We get that list submitted to Ms. Baker. She sends those out, but out of that 100, only 2 respond. Then it appears as though the majority of the community does not want, because once again, a no reply is almost like a negative reply. So just be mindful that, I guess, when you all communicate to the community, that when they get those official postal surveys, they need to respond, because as she stated in the meeting, a no is like, I'm sorry, a non-return is like a no. So there's no set number. Once you guys give us the names, let's say you give us 5,000 names, she's going to send out 5,000 surveys. She only gets back 2,000. That looks like the other 3,000 do not want street delivery. So the majority wins, no street delivery. We're back to square one.
Okay, I just have a follow-up question to that. So if we submitted a boundary survey application in between 2012 and 2014, that sounds like we cannot resubmit until 2022 to 2024. Or did I misunderstand?
No, you're right, but I think that was, the gentleman's name was Dr. Prince. I think actually it was 2010. I don't know if maybe they got an answer in 2012, but when I spoke with Ms. Baker, that was the first thing she did, was went and looked to see if you all were eligible. So that's how we got this far. You all are eligible.
Okay.
So it had to be in 2010 or prior when it was initially submitted. Maybe after all of the paperwork and all of the kind of going through the minutia of things, it probably all panned out in 2012, but she did say the city was indeed eligible for the consideration.
Okay, thank you. That clarifies things. Other questions?
Yeah, I have a question, ma'am.
Go ahead.
My question is to Mr. Wallace on the boundaries. The last time I didn't answer the survey thing because I don't know if y'all had already submitted another one since we've been involved in this. But the last time we submitted a boundary change, the boundaries were extended to go down all the way to Becker, I think, Becker Road, and then come across over to almost Frank Scott, and then over towards the 359. Are the boundaries just the meets and bounds of the city of Prairie View, or do they include other territory other than the city of Prairie View?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, so the one that we sent in, and what I use is the one for key map. So I use the map that we utilize. I want to say it's in City Hall, that had the outlining of the city of Prairie View on there. So I can't tell you the specificity of it. But the last map that I saw in City Hall was an updated map. So I want to say yes, it added the territory, but at the same time, I want to say that it only had the meets and bounds depending on the map. And I can get that map that I utilize as a reference point to everybody whether it's in the zip code or on this town hall, to see exactly where it's at.
Thank you.
Okay, I have another
Yes, sir.
question. You have another question for you, Mr. Wallace, and that is, does the
Yes.
survey mirror the prior survey that was done by the zip code committee somewhere around 2010?
No, when I asked the prior zip code committee that I've known was on the zip code committee, I asked them about whether they approved the survey or not. They said it was good, and when I had also reached out to Mr. Braun and showed it, all the details of it, he said that it was good as well.
Okay, so the new survey that you put out does not look like the one that was done in 2010, or it's totally different?
Yeah, that's the thing. So I'm not even aware of the survey that was put in 2010. I made the survey based off of the criteria that was given to me from Ms. Baker. So I can't even tell you if it did or didn't.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Any other
Yes.
questions?
Pastor Rogers,
Go ahead.
this is Sylvia Cedillo. I just want to make a clarification. And just in case you got confused, my recollection from the research that the zip code committee did was that there had been an application submitted in 2010. We need to get that confirmed because I think Mr. Bryant from the post office has just confirmed with us that those deadlines are critical. And then the zip code committee survey that we did, we pretty much modeled everything that was done by the city of Keller to successfully do a zip code realignment to the boundaries of the city of Prairie View. So I don't know what's currently being done, but it sounds like, again, that you're just targeting a realignment for the boundaries of the city of Prairie View proper. But I hate to be such a bore, everyone. Did Mr. Bryant leave? Oh, there he is. Okay, good. Yeah, I would like to know if it was hypothetically done in 2010, is our deadline is year 2020. Is that correct? And if we miss it, do we have to wait for another 10 years?
No, ma'am. So according to when we met with Ms. Baker, no, you all do not have a deadline of 2020. You just could not reapply until after 2020. You have a 10-year waiting period, but you can wait 12, 15 years after your last application. That's up to you. But no, there is no deadline. It's just you cannot submit prior to the 10 years.
Great, thank you. Have you ever participated
Yes,
in zip code realignment?
No, ma'am. This is my first, and it's I've been with the Postal Service almost 26 years and never had one. I've seen some of them done, but I've never participated. You brought up Keller, and that was one of the ones. And then we have there's one down by Galveston, same issue where they were trying to get the territory realigned. And so, I'm also learning as we go. It's a good history lesson. Mr. Jackson, the history lesson he gave prior to was definitely informational. And so, no, I have not participated in one, but as I stated earlier, whatever I can do to assist you all, I'm here for that. Questions come up, issues come up. Mr. Wallace, he calls me directly. I immediately contact Ms. Baker. If she can't answer, she'll contact somebody at the district level, and we try and get them resolved so that, one, we're not dragging our feet on it, and then two, somebody said earlier, you guys can get this issue resolved once for good.
Are there any other questions? Anyone else have a final comment before I do a wrap up?
I just had one question. Will the post office survey include the students or only individuals with post office addresses? Or
that question did come up. That's a good question. It came up in the initial meeting. So when we talk about the students that are on campus, they have one address, or the ones that do not have PO boxes. So if the students choose to get their mail through the school, it's PO Box 519. That means one survey would go to them. Now, who would answer for 519? I'm not sure. You know, that's not in my realm of things to answer. But 519 would be one address because it's identified in the system as just one address. They are a business who gives mail out to the students. Now, we do have some students that come in and open their own individual mailboxes. And so what happened is we gave Mr. Wallace a list of those. If they get, I'm assuming he's sending them out through the water bill. So if they get a water bill, then they should get a survey essentially. But if they're on the campus, they're not getting a water bill, they get their mail through the school. It would essentially be one vote for 519. And so I don't know if one will be sent to 519 to that PO box.
Are there any other questions? Okay, go ahead, Mrs. Cedillo.
Oh, I just wanted to share a point. I'm not sure that this was a point that was mentioned, but I think the post office has a list of, I guess, qualifications for zip code realignment, and you couldn't find a better example than the city of Prairie View with regard to identity. And if loss of or misidentification of the city affects your city identity, and that was really what we were focusing on. And I hope that that's something that is an emphasis in the application, the upcoming application. And I think that was really the only niche that we as a city fit into. But it was huge because we identified so many reasons as to how the city has had its identity affected as a historically African-American city with an HBCU here. And we really tried to hit home on that with the post office. I think that's important, and I think people need to know that, and I hope that we do emphasize that, because from what I recall, that was one of the reasons, and perhaps Mr. Bryant can share some information with regard to that. But I think we absolutely qualify. It's about putting together a good report, and I would hope that we have people who are able to maybe read beforehand, some volunteer readers for what is to be submitted, especially a good summary of the surveys, and maybe some interviews with longtime residents here, something personal, because I think that's really important. And I think that's all I needed to point out. Was I didn't hear that in our discussion was identity. I wanted to point that out. Thank you.
Ms. Stafford, do you have a question? I saw that you, go ahead.
Oh, yes, I do have a question. First of all, I want to commend you for putting this together, the town hall and all those that arranged this. Mrs. Cedillo, I want to thank you for saying what you just said about how Prairie View is, it's a case study in this whole realignment of our boundaries. But the question I had, and maybe Zante, this is a question for you, is the boundary realignment including Wyatt Chapel, or is it just the city of Prairie View proper? Is Wyatt Chapel looked at as part of the city of Prairie View, or is it being considered as a separate entity?
Yeah, so,
Go ahead on, Zante.
were you gonna say something?
No, I said go ahead. I was waiting on you. Go ahead.
Oh yeah. So, and as I answered with Mr. Jackson earlier, I used the map for the most current updated one that was held in City Hall. So, like I said, I could get that to you to answer that question, so you can see exactly what is in the alignment of the city limits within the map.
Yeah, Wise Chapel is part of the physical boundary within the boundaries of the city of Prairie View. The city's boundaries extend down Wise Chapel Road. On the other side of the church, there's a creek that runs through there, and that creek shows the boundary. So to answer your question, Ms. Stafford, yes, Wise Chapel is part of the city's, within the city's boundary lines.
I just have a follow-up comment to that. Thank you for answering that, Exante and Frank. The reason we have to get this right is because, the city has embarked on an African American Cultural Heritage Commission that is looking at the historical sites within the city of Prairie View and eventually in the county. But if we don't know our own boundaries, it's going to be hard for us to definitively say that something is historic if we later find out that it falls outside of the boundaries of Prairie View. So this is an important issue. It's been going on pretty much most of my life. And, I commend everybody that has been working on this issue over the years. And, it looks like we're about to come to some kind of real resolution on it. And it really needs to, happen. And, just anything, like Reverend Rogers said, anything that the citizens can do to expedite this process and make sure that we get this right. Just let us know, Exante, how we can help you and how we can help anybody on the committee, to see this come to fruition, because it's very important.
We have one last question from Mr. Prince, Dr. Prince.
Yes, ma'am. I just wanted to reemphasize that after that survey, we did get that there was a 7.7 square mile circumference of the city limits of Prairie View, which is a pretty large boundary when you think about it. Just to put in reference, the city of San Francisco is exactly 7.7 miles. So like we say, the legwork is there, and I do thank you all for all of this. And let's continue to push forward. That's all I had, and thank you all very much.
Thank you. So we're down to our last few minutes. I just want to clarify something. So I thank you for thanking me for hosting this, but I got my marching orders from Mr. Thomas. So he deserves credit for organizing and gathering our speakers and making them available for this meeting tonight. So please, also offer him your thanks for the work that he's done to help put this together. The second thing that I wanted to do before we close is I wanted to kind of go through the action items that I heard as people were talking this evening. So I heard that Mr. Wallace said that the next piece is getting the feedback from the residents regarding the survey that's in the water bill, and that it needs to be turned in at City Hall so that they can gather the information that they need for the Excel spreadsheet. He's also asked that we spread the word. So for those of us that already know that is in the survey, we can check with our friends and our families and other church members, that to make sure that they are aware of the survey and get it turned in appropriately. There's been a request for the availability of the former report that was done sometime around 2010. And also, we've gotten a better understanding now of the timeline for submission. So we know that it's sometime in the fourth quarter of this year, first quarter of next year, when the submission is likely to occur. And I also want to offer thanks to Dwayne Charleston for getting this out in the magazine so that people were aware of this event. And I also want to thank all of you who took time out of your evening to come and to listen and to share your questions and your thoughts. And I thank you for supporting this work. I know you guys have got to be a long ways tired because of how long it's been going on. And hopefully in 2022, we'll have an affirmative answer, and Prairie View will have its zip code border extended, and we won't have to have this discussion anymore. So from my mouth to God's ears. Go ahead, Mr. Jackson.
I just want to emphasize that the key to this, yes, is the post office, but another key is the rural addressing system administered by Waller County. They have opted to use the post office zip code system. They don't have to do that. We've checked it out throughout the state. You don't need a zip code to dispatch fire, ambulance, or police. They have opted to do that. They could quit using it today, and that would eliminate a lot of this problem. They assign the addresses, and they have chosen to do this. Don't miss that point. That is very critical.
Thank you. Well, it's 7 o'clock, and I try to keep people, if I say a meeting is going to be an hour, I try to do my best to keep things on time. So it's 7 o'clock, and unless someone has a pressing question, I will end the call. I have recorded it, and I have the chats recorded as well. So I will get information to Mr. Thomas and Mr. Charleston, and request that Mr. Charleston maybe write something up about this evening's discussion in the magazine for the next time, as we prepare for round 2. And the heavyweight fight is what, 15 rounds? Is that what I remember? Did I remember that correctly? Okay,
Yes.
so hopefully we won't have to go all 15 to make this happen. Thank you all, and may you have a good night. May the Lord bless you. May he make his face shine upon you. And may you have a restful night.
Much love and positivity. Have a great one.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank y'all very much.